The dungeons beneath the Red Keep stank of old blood, rat droppings, and betrayal. Ned Stark, once Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, sat slumped against the damp stone wall. His beard was overgrown, patches of grey clinging to a face. Once proud and stern, his leg throbbed from the beating Sir Meryn had given him 3 days past. But worse than the pain in his bones was the weight in his heart. He had confessed to treason to save his daughters. He had surrendered his honor to protect what little remained of his family. And for what? They were going to kill him anyway. The door creaked open. Ned didn't look up. He expected more taunts, perhaps a mocking farewell before the axe fell. But it wasn't a guard. It wasn't even Varys or Littlefinger with their twisting words and hidden daggers. No. This man wore black from neck to toe, his face hidden behind a hood, but the voice, "Ned, we don't have much time." His eyes flicked up. For a moment, he thought he was hallucinating. "Yoren?" he whispered, throat raw. "The Black Brother." The Night's Watchman knelt, cutting through Ned's shackles with a key. "I was here for the boy, Gendry, but you're coming too." "Why?" Ned asked, grimacing as blood returned to his hands. "Because someone still believes in the North, and the North remembers." Yoren helped him up. A second man emerged from the shadows, face pale, cloak northern, sword familiar. "Ned," came a rasp. Ned froze. "How?" The man lifted his hood. Jory Cassell, dead at the hands of Jaime Lannister, or so Ned had been told. "I faked it, with Varys' help. He owed me a favor," Jory said, stepping forward, emotion trembling in his voice. "There are others too. We've been waiting." Within moments they were moving, through tunnels beneath the Red Keep, beneath the city, beyond the walls. The city slept, while the wolves began to rise. By dawn, Ned Stark was gone. The lords of the realm would whisper of how the execution had been delayed, then postponed, then forgotten. King Joffrey would throw tantrums, but the small council had bigger concerns. Rumors of northern unrest, wildlings stirring, a possible Targaryen return. But Ned was heading north, slowly, carefully, disguised, not as a lord, not as a man of honor, but as a ghost. He stopped first in White Harbor. Lord Manderley hid him for 3 weeks, away from the prying eyes of Lannister spies. When Ned finally revealed himself, the portly lord dropped to one knee. "Winterfell lives. We ride at your word." He travelled next to Deepwood Motte. House Glover pledged their swords without hesitation, even the mountain clans who once scoffed. At Southern Lords knelt when the man who bore the blood of the first men stood before them. The North had bled too long under Southern lies. The Red Wedding hadn't happened, yet, but already tension brewed in every corner of Westeros. And Ned Stark, thought dead, now walked among his people as a spectre of rebellion. Robb Stark, crowned king in the North, was deep in battle when he received the message. "Your father lives." He read the Raven Scroll 3 times before believing it. When the hooded man brought proof, Ned's broken great sword hilt and a ring only Catelyn would recognize, the young wolf dropped to his knees. "He's coming," the man said. "He's not the same, and he's not coming for peace." Robb stood, eyes filled with fire. "Then we ride to meet him." But Ned's heart had changed. The boy who once believed in justice now understood that honor had no place in a kingdom ruled by lions and vultures. The North would rise. But this time, it would not ask for peace. It would take vengeance. The sky over Moat Cailin was heavy, with clouds, the swamp mists clinging to the stones like ghosts of old wars. Ned Stark stood on the ancient battlements, staring southward. His face was leaner now, harder. Every line carved into his skin told a story of betrayal, of pain, of purpose. The quiet Lord of Winterfell was gone. What remained was a man who had tasted the gall of southern politics and decided never again to bow his head. Jory stood beside him, watching the horizon. "They still don't believe it's you," he said. "They will," Ned replied. when the wolves howl and the banners rise. Across the ruins of the keep, men labored, repairing old walls, dragging up food stores, fortifying the gates. The ancient fortress, once forgotten, was coming alive again. It would be the wall between north and south, a warning and a symbol. Ned Stark had returned, and this time he would not be so easily taken. The bannermen arrived in waves. The Glovers rode in first, armoured and eager, followed by the Manderleys with a fleet's worth of provisions. Then came the Umbers, loud, angry, and armed to the teeth. Their lord, Greatjon, had not stopped cursing since he dismounted. "You died," he growled at Ned, spitting into the mud, "and we crowned your boy." "You did right," Ned answered. "Robb is a true Stark. He's your king still." "But you're breathing," Greatjon snapped. "And the North don't need two wolves howling at once." "I'm not here to take his crown," Ned said, voice steady. "I'm here to make sure he keeps it." The great hall inside Moat Cailin filled that night. Lords, soldiers, even northern peasants crowded together to see the man who had defied death. Ned stood at the head of the long table, silence spreading as he began to speak. "They took my honor," he said. "They caged me, beat me, and made me lie to protect my children. They promised mercy and gave none." The crowd murmured, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "I was prepared to die with that lie," Ned continued, "but the gods had other plans, and now I know what mercy from the south means. It means heads on spikes. It means wolves fed to lions." He stepped down from the dais, looking every man in the eye. "The North remembers," he said, "and the North is not a pet for southern kings to leash and whip. We are not pawns, we are wolves." Cheers roared through the hall, tankards slammed against wooden tables. Old men wept, young warriors beat their fists on their chests. The old fire had returned. That night they declared Moat Cailin the seat of northern resistance, not a new kingdom, not a rebellion, but a reckoning. But in the south, trouble brewed. Varys stood before the Iron Throne, whispering to Queen Cersei as Joffrey sulked. "Ned Stark may live," the eunuch said softly, "and if he does, the North will burn with fury." Joffrey laughed. "Let them come. I'll put his head on. A spike myself this time." But Tywin Lannister was less amused. "If Stark truly lives, it means someone lied about his execution. It means we've lost our grip on half the realm." Cersei's smile faded. "Then we kill him again." She summoned riders. Ravens were sent to Harrenhal, to the Twins, to Rose Bolton in the Dreadfort. Promises were made, titles, gold, lands. Betrayals began to form like cracks in a frozen lake. Back in the north, Ned moved carefully. He sent ravens to Robb, still deep in the Riverlands, warning him of what was coming. But he also sent a different kind of letter, to Catelyn, to Arya, wherever she was, and to Jon Snow at the Wall. To Jon he wrote with a heavy heart, "You are more than they told you. We have much to speak of, my son. The world is changing, and your part in it will not be small." Jon read the letter by torchlight, hand trembling. Ghost whined softly beside him. Somewhere beyond the wall, the dead stirred, but Jon's mind was back in Winterfell. His father was alive, everything had changed. The snow had begun to fall harder by the time Robb Stark finally reached Moat Cailin. His direwolf, Grey Wind, stalked at his side, fur slick with wet snow, eyes constantly watching the trees. The king in the north rode ahead of his men, his cloak fluttering, face grim beneath the young crown of direwolf antlers. He had seen enough war to age a lifetime, but nothing had prepared him for what waited at the gates. They opened slowly, and there stood Ned Stark. Robb stopped his horse mid-step. For a moment neither moved. The wind howled between them. Then Robb dismounted, took 3 slow steps, and fell to his knees. "Father." Ned came forward, kneeling. With him, the two men embraced, king and lord, son and father, clinging like the last warmth of a dying fire. "I should have died," Ned said quietly, But you didn't, Robb whispered, and now we finish this together. Later, inside the war tent, maps were spread, names listed, alliances drawn. Robb stood across from his father, every movement mirroring the old wolf, but their strategies had begun to diverge. "We strike the twins," Robb said. "Walder Frey still plays both sides. He insulted us when he sent half his sons south and kept the rest holed up behind his gates." "We can't start by burning bridges," Ned cautioned. "Not while the Boltons are watching." "You think Rose is still loyal?" Robb asked, bitter. "I think he was loyal to power," Ned answered. "And now that power is shifting." Catelyn entered then, her eyes wide with emotion. She hadn't believed the Raven until she saw him herself. She had touched his face like it was a ghost's and whispered, "They told me you were gone." "I was," Ned had said simply, "and now I'm not." In that war tent, she watched her husband and son argue like soldiers, not father and child, but equals with too much blood on their hands. She cleared her throat. "If you're both done planning battles, perhaps you should plan for survival." Both men turned. "The South won't allow this," she said. "Cersei will come for us all. We need more than swords and snow. We need strategy." Ned nodded. "She's right." Robb exhaled. "Then we strike where they don't expect it." Far across the land, ravens flew, some to Bear Island, others to Skagos, even into the Night's Watch. The North would unite, but it wouldn't march straight into a Lannister trap. No, this time the North would bleed the South from its corners, cutting off supply lines, turning bannermen, and spreading whispers through the riverlands. It began with the capture of Harrenhal. Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, had grown, restless under Lannister pressure. When word reached him that Ned Stark lived, he threw open the gates and slaughtered the Lannister garrison at dawn. He hung their bodies from the battlements and raised a new banner. The dire wolf and trout intertwined. Then came the Boltons. Rose had remained silent, watching, waiting, but his bastard son, Ramsay, had already begun flaying northern loyalists in the Dreadfort. Ned didn't hesitate. "We march on Bolton land," he told Robb. "If Rose stands down, we spare him. If he resists, we burn it to the ground," Robb finished. The march was swift. Thousands of northern men marched with purpose, and behind them came the fury of the North long denied. When they reached the Dreadfort, they found Ramsay had already fled. Rose stood atop his keep walls, watching their arrival. He didn't raise weapons. Instead, he came down with slow, careful steps, unarmed. He walked straight to Ned and knelt. "I was loyal to your son," Rose said. "You were loyal to whoever held the knife," Ned answered. "But today, you live. Because we don't have time to waste on ghosts." Rose nodded. "And Ramsay, your bastard is mine to deal with," Ned said coldly. Ramsay Bolton was declared traitor to the North. Bounties were posted, mercenaries were hired. Ramsay had made a name for himself through cruelty. Now he would be hunted by the very wolves he once mocked. But in the South, chaos churned. Cersei had sent gold and steel to the Freys. The Iron Bank began to whisper about the Lannisters' growing debt. Dawn refused her summons. The Tyrells had begun to eye their own ambitions. And across the sea, dragons circled over Meereen. But more than all of this, one truth burned its way through the kingdoms. Ned Stark lives, and he's no longer playing the game. He's here to end it. Snow fell heavier now, blanketing the North in a cold silence that spoke of war. The lands were awakening. Every tree, every stream, every stone seemed to whisper, "The wolves are coming." Ned Stark stood at the edge of the Winterfell godswood, eyes closed, hand resting on the old heart tree's gnarled bark. The red sap trickled like blood, and the silence was sacred. It was the first time he had seen Winterfell again, since he'd been dragged south in chains. It felt smaller, and yet it felt eternal. Behind him, Robb approached, cloaked in heavy furs, his breath fogging the air. The men are ready. The ravens have been sent. Ned opened his eyes slowly. And the south? Panicking, Robb said with a half-smile. Ravens say Tywin summoned every bannerman. Word is spreading fast. Some say you rose from the grave. Others think you're a faceless man pretending to be my father. Let them believe what they want, Neddy murmured. They'll believe the truth when we reach the gates of King's Landing. But they didn't strike at the capital, not yet. Ned Stark had no illusions about storming a lion's den while it was still well-fed. The South was still bloated, with Lannister gold and arrogance. That had to change first, so they poisoned it, not with blades, but with truth. Varys, ever the spider, had been feeding whispers into the right ears. He had played a dangerous game, helping Ned escape, keeping Robb alive longer than the Lannisters wanted, even hiding Arya in the shadows of the city. And now he delivered. 1,000 ravens flew from the north, carrying the same scroll. Signed by Ned Stark, sealed with the direwolf sigil, it exposed everything: Joffrey's illegitimacy, Cersei's incest, the silencing of Jon Arryn, the conspiracy against Robert Baratheon, and the false confession made under duress. It's all in there, Ned said to Catelyn, as they stood watching the Maesters prepare the ravens. Everything they buried. You're lighting a wildfire, she warned. Then let it burn. The South exploded. Storm's End refused. The King's call to arms. The Vale closed its gates, declaring neutrality. Even the Reach began to falter, with Highgarden demanding an investigation into the legitimacy of the crown. Tyrion Lannister, trapped between loyalty and logic, argued, with Tywin over strategy. We can't fight the North, the Riverlands, and our own allies, he warned. This isn't war, it's collapse. Tywin remained cold. Then we use the weapon they never will. Tyrion raised an eyebrow. What? Assassins? Poisons? No, Tywin said, eyes glinting. We use the Boltons. But the Boltons are finished, Tyrion argued. Tywin smiled darkly. Ramsay isn't. Somewhere near the neck, Ramsay Bolton smiled as he read the Lannister Raven. He had dyed his hair black, taken a false name, and built a small army of outlaws, flayers, and cutthroats. Now, with gold in his hand and blood in his mouth, he began to move. But Ned Stark had anticipated him. He sent his own assassin, not a knight, not a noble, Arya. She moved through the camps like shadow and silence, killing Ramsay's scouts one by one. When his lieutenant woke with his mouth sewn shut and his eyes missing, Ramsay knew the Starks had not forgotten. Meanwhile, at the wall, Jon Snow prepared to ride south. Sam handed him the last of his belongings, pale-faced and nervous. You're not abandoning the Night's Watch, are you? I'm answering a call greater than vows, Jon said quietly. If the North is to stand, I must stand with it. But the White Walkers, I've warned them. I've seen it. If they still doubt me, they'll see soon enough. He looked down at Ghost, who growled low, sensing something. A crow watched them from a dead tree, head tilting unnaturally. Jon drew his sword. No matter what happens south, he said to Sam, keep your eyes on the north. The real war is still coming. Back at Winterfell, Ned gathered his final council. Robb, Catelyn, the Blackfish, the Greatjon, and Maester Luwin stood around a firelit table. It's time, Ned said. We've weakened them, sown doubt. Now we bleed them from within. And the plan? Robb asked. We march on King's Landing, Ned said. Everyone froze. Not to take it, to bring them to their knees without lifting a sword. Catelyn narrowed her eyes. And how? Will you do that? Ned pulled a parchment from his cloak. It bore a name, Stannis Baratheon. Smoke rose over the Blackwater Bay as ships filled the horizon, flags of wolves, trout, krakens, and stags fluttering in the sharp wind. But this was not a siege, not yet. It was a warning, a gathering storm made of old oaths and northern fury. Ned Stark stood aboard a Manderley vessel, staring at the Red Keep's silhouette with a gaze hard enough to split stone. Beside him stood Stannis Baratheon. "The boy is a bastard," Stannis said coldly, his face gaunt, tired but alight with purpose. "Your letter confirmed what I always knew," Ned nodded, "and you are Robert's true heir." "I do not want allies," Stannis added. "I want obedience." "You'll have justice first," Ned replied, "then you'll have your war." King's Landing was a powder keg. Half the city believed Joffrey was illegitimate. The other half feared the wolf banners that now crept closer by the hour. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei was unraveling. Her spies were vanishing. Her gold was running thin. Tywin had withdrawn to Casterly Rock, sickened and worn, while Tyrion disappeared from court entirely. She clung to the throne through Joffrey's tantrums and threats. They wouldn't dare. "Raise arms against us," she told her council. "We'll burn them all before we kneel." But even the King's Guard were uneasy. The whispers were louder than the royal decrees now. "Ned Stark lives. The North has come. The bastard king is finished." In the shadows of the city, Arya Stark moved like smoke. She had entered the Red Keep through the sewers, past the bones of dead kings and discarded lies. With the help of Varys, she mapped every hallway, every guard, rotation, and when the moment came, she slipped into the Tower of the Hand with her blade and her list. She didn't kill Joffrey, not yet. She left a note in his chambers. A single phrase, "The North remembers," and beside it a wolf fang dipped in blood. By the time Ned rode to the gates of King's Landing, the city was already breaking. Riots had begun near Flea Bottom. Gold cloaks had turned their cloaks inside. Out the Iron Bank had frozen the crown's credit, and ravens flew hourly, each bearing the same question: who sits the true throne? Ned didn't demand entry, he demanded justice. Standing before the city walls with Robb, Stannis and thousands at his back, he sent a single message inside: "Surrender the throne, give up Joffrey, or we come for all of you." Within the throne room, Cersei's voice cracked. "We kill him again. We parade his head for real this time," Joffrey shrieked, banging his fists on the armrests. "Bring me his daughter. I want Sansa's head too." But the court was cold. Even Sir Meryn. Trant avoided her gaze. They had seen too much, heard too much. The tide had turned, and now it was drowning them. That night Sir Barristan Selmy entered Cersei's chambers with a bloodied cloak and dropped his white armor at her feet. "I will not serve liars." And he walked into the night. The final blow came from within. When dawn broke, the gates of King's Landing opened, not in defiance but in surrender. It was Sansa who walked out first, pale but proud, flanked by northern men who had smuggled her to safety under the very noses of her captors. Robb embraced her, and behind her, carrying a white flag, was Tyrion Lannister. "I bring terms," he said, "or what's left of them." In the great hall of the Red Keep, Ned Stark stood once more, but not in chains. He stood with his head high, sword sheathed, cloak trimmed with direwolf fur, surrounded by lords who had once spat on his name. Cersei and Joffrey were dragged forward, kicking and screaming. She spat curses. He wailed like a child. Stannis sat at Robert's throne, expression stony. "Confess," he said to her, "or I burn you both." Ned stepped forward. "No, not fire. That's their way." He turned to the hall. "For their crimes against the crown, against the realm, and against House Stark, I sentence them to exile. Let them rot across the sea, without name, without gold, without power." Cersei screamed as she was dragged. "Away!" Joffrey cried until he was gagged. Ned looked to the lords of Westeros. No more lies. The crown passed to Stannis. The North remained free, not conquered, not ruled, but allied on its own terms. Robb remained king in the North. Arya vanished again, off to chase names in the dark. Sansa returned to Winterfell, stronger than she'd ever been. And Jon Snow, upon returning from the Wall, met Ned in the crypts of Winterfell. There, beneath the frozen stone of Lyanna Stark, Ned finally told him the truth. "You are not my bastard." Jon's breath caught. "You are the blood of Rhaegar." Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, a child of fire and ice, Jon stood in silence, the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. "And what am I meant to do with that?" he asked. Ned's voice was steady. "Whatever you choose, but this time, son, no more lies." And so the wolf who refused to die reshaped the realm, not with armies alone, but with truth, with vengeance measured in mercy and justice written in blood. And still, in every corner of Westeros, they whispered it, "The North remembers."